Good evening to everyone. First of all, thank you for being here. I am Daniel Fernández. I am the author and project lead of Thymeleaf, and that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about Thymeleaf, about what it is, and about how it helps bridging the gap between developers and designers with server-side templates. Actually, Thymeleaf is a quite large technology, and we only have a 30-minute slot, so we're only going to be able to cover the very basics of it. So there's many more that Thymeleaf has to offer than what you're about to see here. So if you didn't know about Thymeleaf before coming to Devoxx, I really recommend you and invite you to go to the website and have a look at everything that Thymeleaf can do for you. Okay, so first of all, what is Thymeleaf? Thymeleaf is a library. Okay, it's a dependency. It's something you add to your project. It's not standalone software. And it's a template engine, so that whenever you have your data on one hand and you have your styles, your images, whatever you want your application to look like on the other hand, and you want to merge them in order to have styled data that is visually appealing, that's what you use. You use a template engine. And it is an open source template engine, and it's actually quite new. Its first version was only published 4 years ago. Currently we are in version 2.1.4, but 10 days ago we just published the first beta 1 of Thymeleaf 3, which is a complete revamp, a very large step forward in Thymeleaf development, bringing many new things. It processes HTML and XML, and you're going to see some things marked in green throughout the presentation. That means those are things that are new in Thymeleaf 3. As of Thymeleaf 3, we will also be processing JavaScript, CSS, and plain text. You'll usually view it around as the view layer of Spring MVC applications. The Spring guys use it quite a lot in guides and tutorials. And you should be able in the future to see it as the view layer of MVC 1.0 applications, JSR 371, whenever it is a reality. That should be 2017. So what does it look like? At least when we are talking about processing HTML, it should look pretty similar to that. Okay? That's a piece of code that might look quite familiar to anyone who knows HTML. You'll see a table, the head, tr, th. Those are HTML normal standard HTML tags, and you see some contents in some of those tags like name, price, oranges. That's something we're going to prototype in text in a moment. We're going to call them like that. But you also see some maybe unfamiliar attributes, unfamiliar if you don't know Thymeleaf, like th text and th each in the block of code on the bottom. Th text, those attributes are actually how Thymeleaf inserts its logic into templates. It's how Thymeleaf does in order to make templates do things. Okay, th text is a very simple attribute. It's probably Thymeleaf's most simple attribute. It simply says evaluate this expression, and whatever comes out of it, of the result of this expression, use it for replacing what is being expressed as the body of this tag. So those two th texts you see at the top, which are actually message expression, internationalization expressions, will simply replace name and price with their internationalized versions. Okay. Then also th each, which you can see in the bottom, th is what it looks like. It's an iterator. It will take the all products collection or iterator or iterable or whatever it is and iterate it, and for each element in that collection or on it, whatever it is, it will create a row in the table for that product, and for that product it will output its name and its price with 2 decimals, which is what is done in the other th text. So those are probably two of the most basic attributes in Thymeleaf. They will serve us in order to understand a good part of the code that is going to be presented in these slides, which is anyway very simple. But anyway, we can start talking now about what has actually driven us into this room, which is how this technology, how Thymeleaf is going to help us bridge that gap between developers and designers. And in fact, in order to talk about that, we first have to understand what is the design development round-trip issue. Okay. The design development round-trip issue is what happens when your designers, the designers in your company, or maybe in your team, or maybe you as a different personality, create a very nice looking design, probably an HTML design like the one you see there. That's an application from the Spring guys. That's Pet Clinic sample application for Spring. And when you have that, you have basically what the customer wants. Okay, you use those prototypes, those designs, in order to reach to a design agreement with your customer, in order to know that that's what the customer wants the application to look like. And once you have that, once you have, well, what the application wants to look like, probably the customer will only last 2 days in wanting that. But anyway, once you get there, you're going to start coding. You're going to start converting that into things that work, into templates. They're not going to be HTML prototypes anymore. And once you do that, normally this is what happens. Okay, this is an example, for example, in JSP. When you convert normal, nice-looking HTML into a working template with many technologies, you'll find out that that HTML is not HTML anymore. Okay, it's just code. It's code which is perfectly understandable by a web server that is processing that code, in this case, something like a Tomcat or whatever it is. But it is no longer usable as a design artifact, because if you try to open it on the browser just by double-clicking on it, that's what is going to happen. Okay, the browser will not be able to show it anymore. So we cannot use that as a design prototype, as a design agreement artifact anymore. This is something that has been happening for lots of years, and we have even justified it a bit during many times, saying things like, my HTML is not HTML anymore, but that's okay, because my design phase has finished. Now I am on a different phase, which is the coding phase. The problem is that in reality, in the real world, design and finish are not words that really work well together. Normally design is never finished, and the customers will most probably want to do style changes, graphical design changes, okay? The problem with that happens is actually twofold. First, it's who is going to do those style changes, and second is how. Okay, normally in many cases it's developers who will end up doing those style changes, most probably because designers will not want to know anything about JSP code. But that's not the big problem, actually. The problem is how developers are going to do those style changes. Many times we will end up restarting the application every time we want to change the shade of blue, move a pixel around from any place in our application. And even if we have tools that allow us to not do that, like, for example, JRebel, things like that, any kind of refreshing mechanism, we will still need Java code that works, that allows us, if we want to talk with a customer about a specific template, that allows us to get to that template. If that template is shown in step 4 of a specific navigation sequence, we need to have steps 1, 2, and 3 working, or at least working enough for us to be able to reach there and talk about the design in that step. Okay, so that is a way of interleaving code and design in non-adequate ways. So there must be better ways. Actually, probably there are many better ways, but one of them, which is the one that Thymeleaf applies, is natural templates. Natural templates is not a term that I coined. It is something that I saw on the Wikipedia once when I was in the early stages of Thymeleaf development. I went to that page there, the comparison of web template engines, and one of the columns of the characteristics by which they were comparing the template engines was natural templates. And the legend says, templates can be documents as valid as the final result. The engine syntax doesn't break the document structure. And then I thought, okay, that looks pretty much like what Thymeleaf does. So from that moment on, I started saying that Thymeleaf does natural templates. But the question is, okay, if we want to do natural templates, how are we going to apply those natural templates to HTML code? And the trick is using non-standard attributes. Okay, non-standard attributes are those attributes that do not come in the HTML specifications and have the characteristic that browsers ignore them completely. If they are there, browsers will act as if they weren't. So we can use them from a Thymeleaf perspective. We can use them in order to inject in our templates the logic that we need our templates to have in a very harmless way. Okay, and they are better than non-standard elements or non-standard tags, elements in XML jargon, because non-standard tags have an influence on the document object model, on the DOM. They will actually, if you create new tags that are non-standard, they will actually affect the tree of nodes that the browser will create for your pages. So they will affect the way your CSSs apply, your styles apply, and they will affect the way your JavaScript scripts execute. So non-standard attributes are much more harmless than non-standard tags, like, for example, C for each, C out, etc. Actually, in HTML5, there is a standard way, a sort of standard way for doing this kind of thing. Of course, we cannot call, we cannot talk about non-standard attributes, because HTML5 allows us to create custom attributes as long as we prefix them with data hyphen. Those are perfectly valid HTML5 attributes, and Thymeleaf allows you to use both syntaxes, the HTML5 valid one and the namespaced one, the one we saw before. The result will be always the same. It will be as if nothing was there, as if we just had a list item like the one you see in the bottom of the slide with just the word apricot in it. Okay, so now we have this. Now we can prototype. And we can have pieces of code like the one we see on the top of the slide, in which we have an image tag with an SRC attribute, a standard SRC attribute, telling the browser to go and grab a PNG from somewhere and show it on the screen, and then a THSRC, which is a Thymeleaf attribute that will evaluate the expression that has inside, which is a link expression, and use the result for creating a new SRC attribute. Okay, the result of this is that we have a piece of template that works both statically and dynamically. It will work when we just double-click on it so that the browser can open it, and it will work when we put it on a web server and allow Thymeleaf to really execute it. But even if you can do that, you might think, okay, it's great, it looks like a good idea, but I'm going to duplicate a lot of attributes. So if I have to create my templates that way, I'm going to create a lot of code that I don't really need if I'm not doing prototyping. And you'd be right. That's why prototyping is optional. It's completely optional. So there is no need that you do this. There's no need that you have an SRC and then a THSRC. You don't need prototyping text like that, name, price, etc. that you saw on the first block of code. And you don't even have to use th text for outputting the result of expressions. You can use, if you see the second TD in that block of code, there, welcome to our eShop, comma, that thing you see between double brackets, that's an inline expression. That's something that Thymeleaf will execute and will just output just there. Okay, so in that case, it will work pretty much like JSP or any other. So first I'm telling you that natural templates is great, and now I'm telling you that not doing natural templates is always great. So what should we do? Okay, normally virtue is in the middle. In the real world, you will be quite safe. It would be a quite sensible compromise if you just got those important templates in your applications, those that are most representative in order to reach to a design agreement with your customer, and do prototyping with them and do them in the way that natural templates allows us to do. And then the rest of them, those that are not needed for talking to the customer, just do them fast, do them with the less amount of code that you can. The important thing here is that with Thymeleaf you have the ability to do both. You can do prototyping for those templates that are adequate for this kind of interchange with your customers, and the rest of them you can just ignore any kind of prototyping efforts. Okay, so well, until now, the things that we have seen until now are the very basics of Thymeleaf, and also the very basics of how it bridges the gap. But there are many more cool features that make Thymeleaf a bit different, okay, and that actually build on this capability. So let's see some of these features, some of these things that make Thymeleaf a bit different than the others. First of all, page composition. Page composition is something that is very important for all of us. It is very needed. It allows us to avoid duplicated code, that thing when you don't really need in your applications to write your header and your footer and your menu in every template. You just want to do it once, then use it elsewhere. In Thymeleaf, there are many ways to do it. Okay, the most immediate one is by using what we call the fragment insertion mechanism. And fragment insertion is performed by three attributes, which are thinsert, thinclude, and threplace. Its syntax, which is the one that you can see in the upper block of code, is very simple. It says first the name of the template from which we want to extract a fragment, and then the name of the fragment, or actually the selector of the fragment. In this case, we're telling Thymeleaf to get a template called footer something. It will be resolved by a template resolvers. And then from there, from that footer, get the fragment called copy. The most simple way of getting a fragment called copy is expecting that there will be somehow in that footer.html, there will be a thfragment attribute saying copy, which is what you can see in the bottom of the slide. But there are more possibilities than that. For example, we could use something called markup selectors. In the th replace that you see there, first we are selecting the template not by its name, like footer, like we saw before, but by a complete URL. That's something that we can do. We can make Thymeleaf call a complete URL and use its result as a template. And then we are selected the fragment not by its name, not expecting a th fragment there, but by using a markup selector, by saying div.banner. That is very similar to CSS selectors, to JavaScript selectors. It's a div tag that has class banner. Okay, we can do that with IDs, we can do that attribute-based, we can do that hierarchy-based. It's a pretty powerful mechanism. What allows us to do this thing is precisely, if you look at that example, we can be calling a banner server that can be company-wide, used by all the applications in a company, possibly a public-facing portal of some kind, and we can select a piece of code that does know nothing about Thymeleaf. You don't need any kind of Thymeleaf code in the fragment you are retrieving. You can just get any kind of HTML and bring it on as if it were a fragment. Okay. What's more, we can add parameters to our fragments. If you have a look at that fragment declared in the first block of code, joiner can declare a couple of fragments, a couple of arguments, like one var and two var, then do whatever it wants with them. And we can call that fragment, that joiner fragment, from a th replace or a th insert by specifying values to those parameters. Username, surname, that's how we can call a fragment as if it were a function. What this allows to us is, given that fragments can live not only in the same template as it happens here, that's why nothing goes before the double colon, not only in the same template, but fragments can be in other templates, and fragments can be elsewhere. For example, in a jar file, we could create a jar file with a lot of fragments that are, for example, used company-wide in all the applications of the same company, and then just bring them from those jar files and use them as if they were functions in our own templates for each application. We can create libraries of fragments. But composition, as I told you at the beginning, what I was explaining to you was just the fragment insertion mechanism. It's just one of the ways we can create composition. We can do composition on Thymeleaf. You can also do hierarchical layouts with something called the layout dialect, which is a dialect in our ecosystem pretty popular. For example, Spring Boot uses it. We can also do tiles 2 integration if you are used to the hierarchical templates of tiles. You can use them with Thymeleaf. And there's also something called Thymel.js, which is a JavaScript library that allows you to perform fragment insertion statically. This is, it can actually, when you are not executing your web server, when you're just displaying your templates statically from the browser for the means of prototyping, it can retrieve fragments of Thymeleaf templates and insert them with JavaScript without the need to execute your web server, so that even for your prototypes, even for your natural templates that you're using for static prototyping, you don't really need to duplicate a lot of code. Okay? So more things. Now, different topic. This is something new in Thymeleaf 3. From Thymeleaf 3 we can do text processing. Text processing means processing templates that are plain text. Okay. Of course, given it is plain text, we don't have tags, so we don't have a very immediate way of placing attributes like th text or th. So we have to devise a new syntax, which is actually pretty similar to tags, okay? But it's using brackets in this case. There you see the th that it is in a sort of placeholder with brackets. This allows us to create templates, like, for example, for text email, if we wanted, and it works in pretty much the same way as if they were HTML templates. Thymeleaf will process it, having most of the features that you have available in HTML templates. And even more, because this text processing extends for JavaScript and for CSS files. So now in Thymeleaf 3 we can consider JavaScript files and CSS files as templates, and that allows us, with a bit of intelligence, of added intelligence by Thymeleaf, to do things like JavaScript natural templates. We could have in a JavaScript file a piece of code like the one you see at the top of the slide, which is a very basic function. It doesn't do anything interesting, but it has an expression which is session.user.name, and that expression is inlined. That's why it has those double brackets. It means execute this and output it, but it is also inside the JavaScript comment. And Thymeleaf will understand that, and whenever it finds it, not only it will execute that expression and output it, but also it will know that it has to remove everything that goes from the end of the comment to the semicolon, so that the end result looks like the one you see in the bottom of the slide. So we'll finally have something that will output to us the name of the user that is currently on the session. So this way we can have JavaScript files that work both statically, both when we are just importing them from our prototypes, and dynamically when they are being served by a web server. Okay? We are a bit bridging the gap between the JavaScript developers and the HTML and Java developers. Okay? And more. Another thing that is coming in Thymeleaf 3, and say is coming, I'm playing a bit the sales guy here because this doesn't exist yet. Okay, this is not in beta 1, it will be in beta 2. It's decoupled templates. Decoupled templates is one also of the core features of Thymeleaf 3. It will allow us to have templates that are pure HTML. Pure HTML means no Thymeleaf code at all. So we will get whatever our designers give to us, whatever it comes out of the Dreamweavers or whatever they are using, and we'll just use them as templates. How? By creating a separate file that will contain several directives, inject directives like the ones you see there, that will actually inject or specify the attributes, the logic, the Thymeleaf logic that has to be injected into the pure HTML file. And the way it will do that injection is by means of selectors. Those cell attributes that you see on the inject tags are markup selectors like the ones we used for fragment insertion. For example, the first one, hash detail /tr, basically means the row, the table row inside whatever has an ID with value detail. So it's pretty straightforward. That way we can just have whatever comes from our designers, do not touch it, allow our designers to evolve it without us touching it, without letting our designers have to understand any kind of Thymeleaf code, and just continue using it throughout all the design life cycle of the template. This is this is actually the way we can better or best bridge the gap between the developers and designers, by allowing them to do completely different things. Okay. Okay, we are actually reaching the end of the talk because I did this very condensed. I was only given a 30-minute slot. So there are many awesome things that Thymeleaf can do, and there are several of them that I wanted to mention quite quickly. First, Thymeleaf allows you to do offline template processing, so it has no hard dependency on the servlet API. You can just process your templates from a server that is not a web server, just a server for an application, create emails, for example, things like that. It has full Spring MVC integration. It can perform Spring form binding. It can perform Spring message resource outputting by integrating with Spring's internationalization mechanisms. It can perform, it can call the Spring conversion service. It can use the Spring expression language, which actually it uses, and many other things. It is very extensible. You can define your own dialects, we call them dialects, which are basically packages of processors or preprocessor or post-processors, we have those now, that will add your own functionality to the Thymeleaf templates, your own attributes, your own whatever can be elements too, so that they do whatever exactly you want to do. It is testable because we have a tool called Thymeleaf testing that will allow you to define tests for your templates as text files, mere text files, no Java code involved, that will tell the Thymeleaf testing tool what you expect to be the output of your templates if you give them a specific input, so that you can execute a lot of these tests automatically as a part of your continuous integration efforts. Okay, so it's automated testing for your view layer, and you will be sure that what you're doing in your application at the view layer too is working the way you want. We have a lot of documentation, we have tutorials, articles, we even have an interactive tutorial that you can use for learning the Thymeleaf syntax online with exercises. We have some tooling, we have an Eclipse plugin, and also IntelliJ IDEA has support for Thymeleaf since version 14. And there are many, many things. Again, I invite you to visit the website and see everything that we have there. And we don't really have, well, I think we have 5 minutes for questions if you have any, before going to see some drones crashing to the walls. I don't see much anyway. If someone is raising his hand, I won't see it. One question.
Is there a huge change on performance in the new version?
Okay, if in Thymeleaf 3, if there's a change in performance, there's a huge change in performance. Actually, we have rebuilt the engine, the entire engine. The internals of the engine have been rebuilt. We have gone from a DOM-based engine, an engine that needed to create a tree for your template in order to process it, to one that works completely event-based. So it's now at a minimum 4 times faster, but it can be, depending on the template, many times faster, even hundreds times faster if the template is very large. And actually, right now we have developed it in a way that it will even start to output results of processing the template as soon as it starts parsing it. It won't wait until everything is done. It will be very fast and very streamlined. So yes, there is a big change in performance. Anything else? Yeah.
You mentioned the Spring Spring integration, but is it also supported in standard Java Enterprise?
Well, actually, standard Java Enterprise means, as of now, it means the future MVC 1.0, because standard Java Enterprise will tell you now that you should use Java Server Faces. In the future, in 2017, it will start to tell you that you should use, or you can use MVC 1.0, which is JSR 3.7.1, which is in early draft, I think, right now. By then, yes, it will be usable in MVC 1.0, because actually the reference implementation of MVC 1.0, which is called Ozark, already includes a Thymeleaf module. So yes, we are going towards being able to use Thymeleaf both in the standard Java EE world and on the Spring world. Okay, nothing else. Thank you very much.